Hello and welcome back to G's Bees. Today I'll be showing you how to apply a treatment of oxalic acid vaporization to your hives. For those of you that don't know, this is one of the methods to combat the Varroa destructor mite, which is one of the biggest decimators of the western honeybee. Originally, the Varroa destructor mite only affected Apis cerana, which is the Asian honeybee, but in the 1800s, the western honeybee was introduced to Asia, where it became infected with this mite. In the 1980s, some of those affected colonies of the western honeybee made it to the US, and it's been a problem here ever since. Varroa are considered a parasitoid, which means parasite-like. They attach themselves to the body of the honeybee and feed on its blood product, which is called hemolymph. More specifically, the protein substance in the hemolymph, which is called vitilogelin. Varroa don't directly kill honeybees, however, it does weaken their immune system and leave them susceptible to many different viruses. With that being said, it's important to monitor the mite loads in your colonies to make sure that they don't exceed thresholds. More information on the Varroa mite and controlling Varroa mite populations can be found on the Honeybee Health Coalition webpage, which I've embedded in the video description. Oxalic acid vaporization is one of the many methods used by beekeepers to combat the Varroa destructor mite. Today I performed my first oxalic acid vaporization treatment, and I treated both hives. Now, the reason I treated the hives so soon after installing them is because they likely have a mite load on them from the supplier that I went through. So we're going to try and knock down that mite population as the bees are starting to build their numbers here in the spring. Oxalic acid vaporization only works on free-roaming bees. It does not work on capped brood because the gas cannot penetrate the wax cappings. So now is a perfect time to do your oxalic acid vaporization treatment right after installing a package, because there are no capped brood. With there being no capped brood, there's no place for mites to hide from this vapor. So in the video, you could see that the vapor expels from the nozzle on my vaporizer. It takes about 20 seconds or so. So I was just doing a little test run there so I would know how long to keep the nozzle inside the hive before I should pull it out. And what I have here is a 1/4-inch hole drilled in the back of both my hives to fit this little nozzle. I just put that cartridge on, which contains 1/4 teaspoon of oxalic acid crystal, and then you just flip it on there and it starts vaporizing or sublimating into the hive there. The rule of thumb is 1/4 teaspoon of oxalic acid crystals per deep box. So I only have one deep on each hive here, so that's just 1/4 teaspoon. And I'm tapping that little container there that contains the crystals to make sure they're all hitting the hot plate and sublimating. Sublimating means that it's going from a solid state and directly into a gaseous state. It's skipping the liquid state step. So that device that I'm using keeps a constant temperature between 360 and 390 degrees, causing those crystals to sublimate. So after about 20 seconds or so, all that vapor's been used up from that cartridge, and I'm just screwing back in that wing screw to keep the bees from crawling through there, and then I just move on to the next hive. It's a real quick process and really effective. I forgot to mention that you're supposed to block off the front of the hives, so I just put a moist cloth over the entrance, and you're supposed to leave it closed off for 10 minutes after vaporizing your hive. And because there's no capped brood, only one treatment should be required, because in theory there's no place for the mites inside the hive to hide from the vapor. It is important when using oxalic acid vaporization to have all the necessary protective equipment. In this video, I had some goggles, a respirator with the proper filters on it, and gloves to protect me from coming into contact with any of the oxalic acid. I've also included a link in the video description that takes you to a short video showing the life cycle of the Varroa mite and how it affects honeybees. As I mentioned previously, I've included the link to the Honeybee Health Coalition's website as well, which is an excellent resource for all things Varroa mite related. With that being said, thanks for watching. I really hope you learned something, And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments.